Hello everybody, Double Bit here. We're going to be doing a quick review, as quick as I can. Let's be honest, I do waffle a bit. We're doing a review today on the Ryobi 15 amp 10 inch sliding miter chop saw. It is a rather good product you can get from Home Depot or online through Amazon, eBay, or a couple other popular stores. So I'm doing a review today. This is a 2-year review with the product. I've used this product a whole bunch, or this tool rather. It's not a product, I'm not trying to sell you something here, I'm just letting you know my opinion and review on this tool. So to give you a little backstory here, I have some notes on my little tablet. I tend to waffle a bit, so I'm trying to be a little bit more focused, if you will. So a little bit of backstory here. I ended up buying this item secondhand. I've been looking for a chop saw for quite a while. I used to work in construction for quite a few years using all sorts of different brands. I used Delta, Ryobi, DeWalt quite a bit. I used Metabo, Hitachi, a whole slew of different ones, even including Makita. And I believe they're all really good products and whatnot. And I have quite a bit of varying ideas of what these tools are deemed necessary to be able to do the tasks that I want for them. I used them for wood, I used them for metal, aluminum, all sorts of different types and such on job sites, construction, where you have a smattering of individuals that are very harsh on tools and don't really care. So I've been able to see what tools are able to hold up and what tools didn't. This tool was actually one that I did see on 1 or 2 different job sites, and it worked really well. I will say for it, its quality is a little bit more of the enthusiast grade. It's not necessarily something I'd feel a super 100% rattling around in the back of a truck. On the way to a job site, it would stand up to it pretty well, but in that circumstance, I would probably go a little bit more with the DeWalt. So let's go over the specs real quick on this Ryobi 10 inch 15 amp chop saw. It has a laser on it, so that way to make a nice precise cut. They call it the exact, let's see here, what do they call this one exactly? The line on this one is the exact line or something like that. It works pretty good. It's about good up to 1/8 of an inch. You're asking a lot out of the laser to go too much less than that, because you're actually having to try to vary one side or the other of how the lasers are set up. And I've used a couple of them, so I've seen some of the lasers to be dead on accurate. You cut in the middle of the line, and I've also seen the line be either on the heavy side or the light side of what you're actually measuring. So it's a good, quick, rough estimate cut item, but if you're doing a little bit more like fine woodworking, kind of like what I do, I end up holding the guard up, bringing the chop saw down, and just getting a nice eyesight on exactly where the blade's going to cut. And I know my blade and machine properly enough to know where the cut is going to be. So that's my status of it. I'm used to that with any chop saw, though. I'm not a huge user of some of the features, but if I'm just doing quick rough cuts for like fence posts or something like that, I'll use the line all day long and trust it to be able to be within 1/8 of an inch. And at that point, it's kind of, if you're hammering it into the ground or something like that, you're going to level it afterwards. You're not going to necessarily be super concerned with 1/8 of an inch. But if you're trying to build like a dresser or drawers and stuff, that might be a little bit more crucial for you. It has a nice comfort D-grip is what it's called. You don't have a bar of steel, and you're not grabbing some odd setup like the Makitas and Deltas have on it. It's nice and comfortable. Trigger works very nice and is very responsive, so as soon as I let go, the brakes engage nicely. I've had this for over 2 years. It helped be the center of my shop. It helped build the entire shed that's around me that houses and is my workshop. And I pretty much feel it is kind of the heart and soul of my workshop. Any of the projects I've worked on, you pretty much can see I primarily start and or at some point use this chop saw in just about everything, because it's quick, it's easy, it's readily available, and I trust my cut on it. It has these little extension arms on the sides here, has a nice little cover to keep the blade away, just like any of the other chop saws do from nicking your hand or whatnot. This one is nice because on this model they actually did put in these little vents, which are not only nice to be able to put your finger in to move it around, but also working with aluminum and a variety of other like wet wood on a job site that you have to cut real quick to kind of use to hold open a doorway or something like that, and you're making quick cuts and the material is either wet or you're heating it up like with aluminum, it'll start to gum up on the sides of the covers, and it'll end up having a big chunk kind of flop out and slough around, and then you'll have a hot piece of aluminum whacking your hand or near your face a lot when you're making your cuts. But these grooves actually help quite a deal on those to be able to kick out a lot of the dust. But this one I do enjoy has a very nice little dust collector tube right here. It goes into just a bag. And this design with this little bit of venting here to create a nice draft, as I make my downward cut, that blade actually throws a great deal of cutoff material right into that little dust port. So out of a lot of the ones I've worked with, this is actually probably one of the better of the run of the litter, if you will. And especially if you hook up a little shop vac or something to it, it works great. And these are awesome to work with. Just your little shop vac vacuum tubes will hook right to it, which is nice. I have the in-between size. It's not quite a full-on dust collector like I have mounted on the wall. It's a 4-inch. I've got the rigid, and that one's the 6 horsepower. And it's nice, but it's got that kind of in-between size. I think it's like 3.5 inches, or around, actually no, it's 3-inch. Anyway, side note, so this unit retails for a rough estimate of about $216, $220. Some websites have it for $230 as their no sale price. But you can get this a lot of times on sale at Home Depot for about $189.99, which makes it one of the best bargain price chop saws for the capabilities you get. Now, I know a few of you out there are looking at different review videos and they're looking at different products and stuff, and you're gonna think you're gonna want a 12-inch right off the bat, but I'll be here to tell you, in my years in construction and whatnot, I feel a 12-inch is great if I'm having to rip down boards and try to use one tool to do everything for like fence posts, 4x4s, and a lot of real thick material. And it's nice, but the things that I always looked at was, I got up into being a foreman position and looking at the budget for a 12-inch over a 10-inch chop saw. If the need was there, I'd grab a 12-inch from the shop and a blade with it. But a lot of the time, I would end up actually going with the 10-inch because the blade is, if you went with like Diablo, is like $52 after tax. Versus if you went with a 12-inch Diablo, you're looking at around close to 90 plus, depending on if you're going through like Build Pro or Pro Builder or something like that. Any of those outfitters like Fastenal and whatnot, they're going to be jacking the price up a little bit. And if you're out in the sticks and there's like one, Car Quest or some building that just so happens that Jim Bob is selling also chop saw blades, the 12-inch he's going to want a premium for versus your 10-inch he's going to have readily available. And if you're an enthusiast that works on stuff like I do for pallet wood and a lot of stuff that I'm not really stretching the bounds of anything thicker than a 1/2 inch to like a 2x4, maybe I might hit a 4x4, but in that instance I just flip the material over and finish my cut. These blades you're going to find a lot of the time too at Ace Hardware and everywhere else. You're going to find a 10-inch blade. You won't always find a 12-inch blade, and that's also where you're going to find them at more of a premium for the price. So this is just kind of one of those additional budget items that I enjoy using a great deal. Plus having the sliding capability of it, I'm actually able to get cuts. Yeah, the saw table is at 13 1/4, but your actual cut is going to have just that little bit of a curvature of the blade that you're not going to quite get on that one. So this is what I'd say comfortably I could get a 13-inch cut out of this using like 1/2 inch or 1-inch material on it. So I'm able to get a great deal of stretch on each of my cuts, and even with it being a 10-inch, my actual blade cut, I can still cut 4 inches dead center. So on your outside you would get up to, depending on your material, around 3 inches. So you would get a little swish, but just a rotation and additional cut and you'd be good. So that's kind of my opinions over a 12-inch as a side note. Continuing on some of the specs, it has a sliding action and it is assisted by ball bearings in this model, which is not a hugely uncommon thing by any means. DeWalt and a variety of other brands have it. There's been some Deltas and some Makitas I've used in the past, and a few of the brands you can actually still buy their models and make models where it's just a slider that isn't actually ball bearing assisted. And let me tell you, it is a absolute pest to try to work with that job site or otherwise. If you're doing a lot of cuts and you're not consistently going through with canned air, or if you have a compressor on site and cleaning those out, it'll give you a lot of issues. Just to go over a few more of the features on this, we'll just kind of run through the gauntlet on this. So 10-inch sliding compound miter chop saw, 15 amp. So this is nice. This will actually be right at or just under 15 amps. So if you are running it exactly on a breaker that's 15 amp, this won't trip it. There are a few chop saws on the market, DeWalt especially, that I've had issues in the past where it says it's a 15 amp, but its peak power is technically 16 amps, so it'll trip your breaker a lot of times as soon as you hit something like a 4x4 or a denser, harder like oak or something like that. You'll actually get an extra pull on your chop saw and it'll trip your breaker unless you have a 20 amp breaker. It does come with a 10-inch carbide tip, which is actually was on this chop saw even after I got mine secondhand. The original owner only made 3 cuts and went to a 12-inch. It is a 5500 RPM motor with an auto-stopping brake, which has worked really well on this one. And every now and again you'll have on any chop saw where you let go and it'll take a second longer and then it'll stop. This one has had that happen on occasion, but it's happened since I've gotten it, and it happens with all of them. You'll have just like a split second longer before the brakes engage where you let go and then it'll stop. This one is very responsive and pretty much stops 100% of the time. There's every once in a great while it might not, but I've also had it for 2 years and it hasn't gotten consistently worse. This one actually, I've put it through its paces. I've cut numerous planks, multiple cuts of just stop, like cut, stop, to get all these little pieces to make nice little decorum for the outside of the workshop, depending what project I've done. I have cut at least a couple thousand of these on both ends and made multiple cuts per board, and I have disassembled a couple hundred pallets at least, so you can do the math there. This has been through the gauntlet of that, and it did the brunt of the entire workshop here, and I still use it in the workshop, and I've only had to replace the blade, and I do use mid-grade. I replaced the carbide one that came with it, not too fast, but it was about right before I finished the shed I had to replace it, and I threw on another one. I got another 10-inch blade I got on sale just sitting back there behind me that I'll eventually throw on here as well, but this blade is still nice, and I've only gone through probably 2 blades since I've had this, and it's been a champ the whole time. It doesn't burn any wood whatsoever. So this does also feature a 1/4-inch dust port, and it does have the bag. This had an arm off of it, but when I got it, the guy had originally had it and lost it. So I've used them in the past. They're a great little tool for just kind of holding on a piece of wood, or if you don't want your hands to get too close to the blade, you can kind of articulate it and get it within 2 to 3 inches of your cut mark, and it'll hold the piece of work down pretty well. And eventually I'll probably end up getting those. That's the one benefit and beauty of this as well, is it's still readily available. Even though it's 2 years old, you can still buy this one brand new from Home Depot, and you can get components for it. So I've gone on eBay and Amazon, and the parts for it, for like the arm, I think it was like around 15-20 bucks. You can buy a new trigger switch for it. I think that one varies. I've seen them go for $15 on Amazon. When they sell out, a few people have them there for like $32 to $40, but this switch hasn't died. I mean, I've had it for over 2 years. You can buy brushes for it, which do go out on occasion. Mine, like I said, over 2 years, I haven't had to replace them, but I always like having the ability to do so if it presents itself. And I think those weren't bad. I think it was like 30-40 bucks for a set of brushes for this, which at that point, if I've gotten 2 years out of it, I'm fine throwing $30 at an item versus spending another $200+ on another chop saw, when I can literally just do maintenance parts at that point. It's like you're not going to throw away your car because the brakes start squealing on you. You're going to go replace the brakes because they wear out with the vehicle, and you just replace the brakes and you can continue to drive your vehicle. Same basis in my book. It has a standard 5/8 inch arbor, so that way you can replace your blades and they're all going to fit perfectly. It's no oddball in between sizes. So in my opinion, I feel this dust ramp is built very well, and it does beat a lot of the competition. I've used DeWalt's, I've used a variety of different chop saws. This will, just for the nature of the fact that when it's down here you have a very great distance of blade still exposed, you're going to have pieces go flying for little chunks of wood or metal or plastic or whatever you're cutting, trim work or whatnot. But a great deal of it actually goes into this bag with no assistance whatsoever. No vacuum hooked up or anything, and I'm able to just empty this little bag out quite a great deal of the time. I do have a dust collector that I can actually clamp up right here, and just clamping it right to one side or the other, it will get a great deal, and the shop will look pretty much just like it is right now, which is awesome. And I have no issues or concerns with it, but it does still do a great deal of going right through that little ramp right into the side of it. So I'll give that a definite gold star or a plus, or however you want to say it. over the other competition. The height of the cutting table is the standard about 3.5 inches, so it'll work perfectly for a 2x4 or anything else if you're on a job site to turn on sideways. So if you wanted to put this on a tailgate, turn a 2x4 up on its end, or if you're working off of a dining room table or whatever you have set up for your shop, or any kind of situation where you're on the ground or doing whatever you're working on, you can just turn a 2x4 on its side and it'll extend your table perfectly to give you a more precise cut, which is nice. There's a few brands that don't always stay true to the true 2x4 height, if you will. But I will say every chop saw has the redundancy issue, and sliding chop saws especially, I feel, have this issue that if you're not paying attention you can do, and a lot of newbie construction workers and a variety of other people who don't use chop saws too often end up finding this. They'll say that their brand is junk, or this is having an issue, none of my cuts are straight. Well, if your bearings get too dirty and you don't maintain them and clean them out properly, especially on a sliding chop saw, when you go to push, you'll notice one side goes in a little smoother than the other, and it'll pull, and then as you're trying to force that through to push through grime or dirt and debris, you're going to end up actually kind of pulling your chop saw one direction or the other, and you're going to end up cutting a S-curve if it's a larger piece, or you're going to cut a real crooked line. So maintaining the work equipment, I've had some of these that I've run them all day long. Just I'm on the chop saw manning it. You just give me material, I cut it to the distance, hand it to 5 guys working in 5 different parts of the building. Just pile it up, let me know if it's a heavy or strong cut, and that just lets me know one side of the line or the other. Hand it to me, I cut it. That's it. I've just done that, and these have gummed up to the point where I'm getting that same varying cuts where I go to cut, and it'll pull left or right. So if you don't maintain the equipment regardless of brand, like I said, I've used quite a few of them, that will happen. Now this one, I do notice it with the D shape and also this nice little inlet, it feels like the trigger on a drill or something like that. Your hand fits in nicely, and if you push straight with your body you won't have any issues whatsoever, and this one works great. Now if I'm super tired or I'm not thinking and I'm just kind of pulling and shrugging and I do have a buildup debris, I have had 1 or 2 cuts go off on me, but at that point I'm going to put it up to user error. That's me not properly using my tool, and I can't knock it. A few people have written reviews about this because I was looking through the reviews on them for Home Depot, and they've said, you know, I used this for 3 months and then all my cuts just went to junk, and they'll post pictures and their sliders are completely garbage. They're rusted all to death from being set in a truck for 2.5 months or however long they had the tool, and they're just covered in shavings of metal and wood, and this little cover for the ball bearings is ripped off, and you can tell that somebody just got mad, ripped it off, and you can tell the tool is just absolutely beaten. And at that point, if these are rusted and destroyed and the bearings aren't sliding on it, I'm going to say user error. Now the one thing I didn't look into for a sliding chop saw versus all the numerous normal chop saws I've had, and a couple of the sliding chop saws that I've been able to play around with and I've had on job sites and whatnot and work quite a bit, I never really thought about the accommodation of the distance on a sliding chop saw. Now a few people talk about it, but not everyone really thinks it through before they make their purchase. So the apparatus from the back of the actual roller to the front of the blade is 32 inches, just under 32 inches. Now you multiply that when this is fully in the backwards position to make your appropriate 90-degree cut. So now you've extended your item from the back to the front of this little knob right here. You're looking at 40 inches. So you have to accommodate 40 inches in your workspace. Now what I ended up doing is I got a table, and that's 23.5 inches, and I had to add on an additional 6 inches at the end of it, and then I have to put my chop saw to the very edge of it and allow the very end of the 2 bars to overhang into my windowsill just to make each of my cuts. So I've made this work, and I have the ability to mount clamps on here to hold it in place. I can take this off and I can use this as a full workspace. It's my modular setup and my choice on how I like to work with this small space I have. My total footprint in the shop is only 200 square foot, so a lot of the times you'll see in the backgrounds of other numerous videos I'll just push it in a little bit and turn it to the side so I'm not having any of the front of the chop saw's guide here knocking into me, and I'm not hitting it around or anything like that, and it's able to accommodate going against my window. So for total footprint on this one, your width is about 30.5 inches by the 42. This one, like I said, for the bang for your buck and the abilities that this has, is well worth the purchase price. Just remember its footprint that it takes up. So as far as cons, any of the slide and chop saws have it, but I'd say footprint. This is a larger footprint chop saw for sure, without being a 12-inch chop saw, which adds on a few extra inches for overall dimension. Your height's going to be a little taller, everything's going to be a little bit bigger. That's one dimension I forgot to add. This one is at 16 inches for height when it's in its locked position. When it's not in its locked position and it's in its upright position, just at a standstill, so it's fully back against its stopper, you're looking at about 25.5 inches, so just plan for about 26 inches with your hand on top of it to make each cut from beginning to end. So to summarize, a quick little run through of my feelings and opinions on the Ryobi 10-inch 15 amp chop saw would be that it is a fine tool in comparison to the other top brands. Price versus value, I think this is a strong competitor. I feel that it would dominate quite a few of the other brands. And as far as if I would buy it again, absolutely. 2 years of use with the tool and I haven't had anything fault on me. I haven't had anything jam, break, go bad. All of my brakes still work, and my brushes are still good. It still amps up to a proper speed. It'll cut through anything that I put it at, the same as it when I first got it. And it all around is just a perfectly good tool that I'm more than happy to use for hopeful years to come. And I definitely would suggest to anyone that I know to purchase this type of brand and this tool 100% from Home Depot or anywhere else, or secondhand like I did. As long as it was taken care of and wasn't absolutely beaten up to death, it would be a tremendous tool. And it would definitely be something super strong that I feel anyone should have in their workshop or their job site. And I'm 100% behind it for a product again. So thank you very much. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, hit that like button. If you enjoy what I do, make sure to hit that subscribe. It helps me out a great deal. And if you want notifications, make sure to ring the bell. Thank you very much and have a good day.